What if one of the most overlooked coins in an old collection is hiding in plain sight? A date that looks ordinary, a tiny mint mark most people ignore, and a piece of American history that collectors still pay close attention to. Before you spend another old coin, take a closer look, because this first discovery may be easier to miss than you think. First coin number 1. There's a reason experienced collectors never judge an old coin by its face value alone. Sometimes, the date and mint mark are enough to make you stop, look again, and wonder how many similar pieces are still sitting unnoticed in family collections, old jars, or forgotten boxes. That brings us to a 1952 with D. Lincoln wheat penny in extra fine condition, a classic American cent that deserves a much closer look. The early 1950s were an important period in American history. The United States was moving through the post-war era. Industry was expanding, and everyday commerce depended heavily on small denomination coins like this one. The 1952 with D cent was struck at the Denver Mint for ordinary circulation, giving Americans a durable 1-cent piece for everyday purchases. On the obverse, you'll see Abraham Lincoln facing right, surrounded by the inscriptions, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date 1952. Just below the date is the small D mint mark, identifying Denver as the mint where this coin was produced. That little letter matters because collectors always consider the date and mint mark together when evaluating a wheat penny. Turn it over, and the famous wheat reverse appears. 2 wheat ears frame the inscriptions, "United States of America," 1 cent, and "E pluribus unum." It's a design that instantly takes you back to an earlier chapter of American coinage. The 1952 with D wheat penny was made primarily from a bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams, measures approximately 19.05 millimeters across, and is about 1.52 millimeters thick. The edge is plain with no reading. But here's where condition starts to become extremely important. An extra fine example has already survived decades while retaining considerable detail from its original design. Collectors look closely at Lincoln's hair, cheek, jawline, the wheat stalks, lettering, and overall surface preservation. Original color, texture, and surfaces can make a major difference. And this is something every collector needs to remember. Never clean an old wheat penny. Polishing, rubbing, or chemical cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and may reduce collector appeal. Original surfaces matter. If you believe you have an unusually valuable example, professional grading may be worthwhile before making any decisions. The collector market value you provided for this 1952 with D example is $185,000. That is an exceptionally high claimed market figure, so any coin represented at that level would need strong authentication, condition verification, and credible market evidence. Certain specimens have sold for impressive prices, but collectors should always compare certified examples and actual auction results rather than relying on an asking price. So before you dismiss an old wheat penny as just 1 cent, check the date, look for that tiny D, inspect the surfaces, and never assume an ordinary-looking coin has no collector interest. Do not spend this coin until you know exactly what you have. And just when you think the search is over, the next coin brings a completely different chapter of American coinage into the story. And one small detail could make you look at an old dime very differently. Next coin number 2. Some old coins tell their story through a tiny mint mark. This one tells part of its story because that mark is missing. Pick up a 1962 Roosevelt dime, and at first glance, it looks like an ordinary 10-cent piece. But for collectors, the date, minting location, condition, and surviving surfaces can turn an everyday-looking dime into something worth investigating very carefully. The year 1962 was a fascinating moment in American history. The country was entering a rapidly changing decade, with new technology, growing industry, and major changes taking place in American life. Coins were constantly moving through stores, cash registers, banks, and pockets, and the Roosevelt dime was one of the workhorses of that economy. The coin was created to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and by 1962, his portrait had already become a familiar sight in American commerce. On the obverse, Roosevelt faces left. Around him are the inscriptions, "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date, 1962. On this example, there is no mint mark beneath the date, an important detail collectors should always notice before moving on. The reverse carries the classic torch design, surrounded by an olive branch and an oak branch. You'll find United States of America, a pluribus unum, and one dime. Those details aren't just decoration. They help tell you exactly what denomination and series you're holding. And there's another major difference between this dime and the earlier wheat penny. By 1962, Roosevelt dimes were being struck in a 90% silver and 10% copper composition. The coin weighs approximately 2.50 grams, measures about 17.91 millimeters in diameter, and is roughly 1.35 millimeters thick. Its edge is reeded, with the familiar series of grooves around the outside. Now look closely at the condition described here. Light gray waves, in very fine condition. That surface appearance deserves attention because collectors care about how naturally a coin has aged. They inspect Roosevelt's hair and facial details, the lettering, the torch, the leaves, the rims, and the overall preservation. Attractive original examples become harder to find as more old coins are cleaned, scratched, or mishandled over the decades. That's why one of the biggest rules in collecting is simple: never clean an old coin. Even if you think you're making it look better, cleaning can destroy the original surface that collectors want to see. Original surfaces matter, and professional grading may be worthwhile if a coin appears to have significant collector value. The collector market value you provided for this 1962 Roosevelt dime is $180,000. That is an exceptionally high claimed figure for a standard issue coin, so a valuation at that level would require authentication, professional grading, and strong evidence from credible market or auction records. Demand remains strong among collectors for well-preserved historical U.S. silver coins, but actual selling prices can vary dramatically with grade and verified provenance. So if you have old Roosevelt dimes tucked away, don't just glance at them and move on. Check the date. Check the mint mark area. Study the surfaces under good lighting. And whatever you do, do not spend this coin until you know what you have. But we're not finished yet. The final coin in this countdown brings us back to the wheat penny era, and sometimes the most familiar design is exactly where collectors find themselves looking twice. Next coin, number 3. Sometimes the coin sitting quietly at the bottom of an old collection is the one that deserves the most attention. No flashy modern design. No unusual shape. Just a familiar Lincoln portrait, a wheat reverse, and a date that millions of Americans once carried without giving it a second thought. But when you find a 1950 wheat penny in very fine condition, it becomes a coin worth slowing down for. The year 1950 marked the beginning of a new decade in post-war America. The country was rebuilding, industries were expanding, families were returning to normal life after the war years, and small coins like this one were constantly moving through everyday commerce. The Lincoln wheat penny had already become one of the most recognizable pieces of American pocket change, and the Philadelphia Mint produced 1,950 cents without a mint mark for circulation. Start with the obverse. Abraham Lincoln faces right. Within God we trust. Above his portrait, Liberty to the left, and 1,950 on the right. Look closely beneath the date. There is no mint mark. That absence is important because it identifies this as a Philadelphia minted example. Now flip it over, and you get one of the most memorable reverses in American coinage. Two wheat ears frame the words United States of America, 1 cent, and E pluribus unum. The wheat design is simple, but it is exactly what gives these cents their unmistakable character. This 1,950 Lincoln cent was made from the traditional bronze composition used for the series, approximately 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams, measures approximately 19.05 millimeters across, and is roughly 1.52 millimeters thick. The edge is plain. But here's where the real collector examination begins. Very fine condition means this coin has experienced decades of circulation while still retaining substantial design detail. Collectors examine Lincoln's hair and facial features, the lettering, the date, the rims, and especially the wheat stalks on the reverse. They also look for original surfaces and natural color rather than a coin that has been artificially polished. That matters because cleaning can permanently hurt a collectible coin. Never clean it, even if it looks dirty or dull. Scrubbing, polishing, or chemical treatments can leave marks that cannot be undone. Original surfaces matter, and professional grading may be worthwhile when a coin is being considered for a significant valuation. The collector market value you provided for this 1,950 Philadelphia wheat penny is $194,000. That is an exceptionally high claimed value for a standard issue coin, so a figure at that level should never be accepted without professional authentication, grading, and credible auction evidence. Actual auction activity and selling prices can vary enormously depending on grade, originality, eye appeal, and certification. Collectors continue searching for attractive examples, but survival alone does not automatically make every 1,950 cent rare. So if you have an old wheat penny collection, this is exactly the kind of coin you should examine carefully. Check the date. Look beneath it for the mint mark area. Study the surfaces under good light and compare the details against authenticated examples before making any decision. And most importantly, do not spend this coin simply because it looks like an ordinary penny. Many people unknowingly spend coins that deserve a second look. If this 1,950 wheat penny made you curious, check your own collection today. You never know what an old coin might reveal after decades of being overlooked. If you enjoyed this countdown, like the video, subscribe to Hidden US Coins, and share it with another collector who loves searching through old American coins. Comment Rare Coins Hunter if you're still watching. I want to know who the real treasure hunters are.